Who did this to you? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Amara froze halfway through pouring whiskey into the crystal glass, her hand trembling so badly that the amber liquid sloshed against the sides. Around the conference table, 6 men in tailored suits went silent, their conversation about territory disputes dying mid-sentence. Kang Junseo rose from his chair with the slow, deliberate grace of a predator. His eyes, dark, cold, unforgiving, were locked on Amara's face. Specifically, on the purple bruise spreading across her left cheekbone and the white bandage taped near her temple. I asked you a question. His voice was soft. Deadly soft. Amara set the decanter down with shaking hands, keeping her eyes lowered. No one, sir. I fell. Look at me when you lie. He was moving toward her now, each footstep echoing in the suddenly suffocating silence of the room. Actually, don't. I hate being lied to. She could feel the weight of everyone's stares. The 6 men watching with barely concealed curiosity, probably wondering why their boss had stopped $1 million negotiation over a maid's bruised face. She'd been invisible to these men for 3 months. Furniture with a pulse. Now she was the center of attention, and it made her skin crawl. Sir, we really should finalize, Lee Minute-ho, Junseo's second-in-command, started. Get out. Junseo didn't even glance at him. All of you. Now. But the bosun. Did I fucking stutter? The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Out. Before I decide you're the reason she's standing here with my employee's face looking like someone used it for boxing practice. The men scrambled. Papers rustled, chairs scraped, and within seconds the room had cleared except for Amara and the man who now stood less than 3 feet away from her, studying her face like it held the secrets to nuclear codes. When the door clicked shut, Junseo reached out. Amara flinched, and something flickered across his face. Something almost like hurt, though that was impossible. Men like Kang Junseo didn't feel hurt. They caused it. His fingers stopped an inch from her chin. May I? The question surprised her so much she nodded. His touch was gentle as he tilted her face toward the light, examining the bruise with the focused intensity he probably used when deciding which rival to eliminate next. These are knuckle marks, he said quietly. 4 of them. Whoever hit you was right hand, wearing rings on their index and middle fingers. The angle suggests they are taller than you by about 4 inches. His jaw clenched. And this wasn't the first time they've hit you. I can see the fading yellow of an older bruise under your makeup. Amara's breath caught. How could he possibly? I've put enough people in hospitals to know what repeated violence looks like. His thumb brushed so lightly over her cheekbone she barely felt it, but the tenderness of the gesture made her throat tight. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want the truth. Who did this? To you? She should tell him it was none of his business. She should bow out gracefully and return to the kitchen where she belonged. She should remember that she was nobody, just another foreign worker trying to pay off debt she never should have owed. Trapped in a country where she barely spoke the language, working for a man whose hands were stained with more blood than she could imagine. But the way he was looking at her, like her pain personally offended him, like whoever had hurt her had declared war on something he owned, made her stupid. Your head housekeeper, she whispered. Mrs. Choi. The change in him was instantaneous. The gentle man examining her bruises vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. His hand dropped from her face, and he stepped back, pulling his phone from his pocket. Minute-ho, he said when someone answered. Bring Mrs. Choi to my office. Now. He listened for a second. I don't care if she's in the middle of performing open-heart surgery. Get her here in the next 3 minutes or you're both fired. Out of a cannon. Into the Han River. He hung up and turned back to Amara, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes that looked almost like concern. No. Impossible. Sit down, he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs around the conference table. Sir, I should really. That wasn't a suggestion. Amara Saturday. Her legs were shaking anyway. Junseo leaned against his desk, arms crossed over his chest, watching her with an intensity that made her feel like she was being X-rayed. How long has this been going on? It's not. Amara. Her name in his mouth sounded different than when anyone else said it. Sharper. More real. I employ 73 people in this house. I know all their names, their positions, and exactly how much they are worth to me. You've worked here for 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. You're punctual, quiet, and you don't steal, which already makes you more valuable than half my staff. So when someone damages my property, I take it personally. His property. Right. That's all she was. Mrs. Choi doesn't like that you give me special attention, Amara said quietly, staring at her hands. She says I don't know my place. That I'm. She stopped, not wanting to repeat the words. That you what? That I'm trying to seduce you. Use my exotic appeal to climb above my station. The words tasted bitter. She said you have a type, and I'm not it. That I should remember I'm here on a work visa that can disappear with one phone call. Junseo was silent for so long that Amara finally looked up. His face was perfectly blank, the expression she'd seen him wear right before he'd had a man dragged out of this very office, never to be seen again. My type, he repeated softly. Interesting. Before Amara could respond, the office door burst open. Mrs. Choi swept in, her small frame radiating indignation, her grey hair pulled into its usual severe bun. She was in her late 50s, had worked for the Kang family since Junseo was a teenager, and she ran the household with an iron fist that would make a drill sergeant weep with envy. Sir, I was in the middle of. She stopped when she saw Amara sitting at the conference table. Her eyes narrowed. I see. The girl's been telling tales. The girl has a name, Junseo said pleasantly, which was when Amara knew Mrs. Choi was in serious trouble. She'd learned that Junseo's pleasant voice was his most dangerous one. And she has a bruised face that matches your rings perfectly. Want to explain that? Mrs. Choi's chin lifted. The foreign workers need discipline. They don't understand our ways. She was what? Breathing incorrectly. Existing in a way that offended you. She's been getting ideas above her station. I saw the way she looked at you during the charity dinner last week. Like she had any right to look at me. Junseo pushed off from the desk. In my own house. The house where she works? That's the crime that earned her a beating. It's not just that. Mrs. Choi's voice rose, defensive now. She doesn't know her place. She's always. Where's your right hand? The question threw Mrs. Choi off balance. What? Your right hand. Hold it up. Mrs. Choi raised her hand, confusion crossing her face. The rings glinted in the light, two thick gold bands on her index and middle fingers, family heirlooms she wore like badges of honor. Junseo studied them for a moment, then nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Those match the bruises perfectly. He pulled out his phone again. Minute ho. Send someone to Mrs. Choi's quarters. I want her personal belongings packed within the hour. He paused. No, all of them. She won't be coming back. What? Mrs. Choi's face went white. Sir, you can't. I've worked for your family for 30 years. And in those 30 years, how many other staff members have you brutalized? Junseo's voice was ice. How many people didn't speak up because they were afraid? Because they thought I wouldn't care about some maid or cook or gardener getting smacked around. She's nothing. Mrs. Choi's composure cracked. She's some foreign girl with debts and a fake smile. The slap echoed through the office like a gunshot. Amara gasped. Junseo had moved so fast she'd barely seen it, and now Mrs. Choi was stumbling backward, holding her cheek, shock written across her face. That's for Amara, Junseo said quietly. So you know what it feels like. He straightened his suit jacket. You're fired. Effective immediately. Minute Ho will have your severance, 1 month's pay, which is more generous than you deserve. If I ever hear that you've badmouthed Amara or anyone else from this house, I'll make sure every household in Seoul knows exactly why you were dismissed. Am I clear? Mrs. Choi's face crumpled, but beneath the shock, Amara saw something else, rage. Pure, burning hatred directed straight at her. This is her fault, Mrs. Choi hissed. You're throwing away 30 years of loyalty for some. Get out. Junseo's voice dropped to that deadly quiet register again. Before I decide firing you isn't enough. Mrs. Choi fled, and the door slammed behind her hard enough to rattle the frame. The silence that followed was deafening. Amara sat frozen in her chair, her mind reeling. Junseo had just fired his head housekeeper, a woman who'd been with his family for 3 decades. Because of her. Because of a few bruises that would heal in a week or 2. Sir, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. He was texting rapidly on his phone. I should have known something like this was happening. I employ people to run this house because I trust them not to be sadistic assholes to the staff. Clearly, that trust was misplaced. But 30 years means nothing if she spent them terrorizing people who couldn't fight back. He looked up from his phone. You're not in trouble, if that's what you're worried about. And neither is anyone else who might have been on the receiving end of her discipline. Amara's hands twisted in her lap. She's going to hate me forever. She can hate you from whatever rock she crawls under. She won't be a problem. There was something in the way he said it, a certainty that went beyond just firing someone, that made Amara's stomach clench. She'd heard the rumors about Kang Junseo. About people who crossed him mysteriously leaving Seoul with broken bones or worse. About rivals who vanished into the Han River wearing concrete shoes. about a ruthlessness that had made him the youngest mafia boss in the city's history. Before we continue, if you're already hooked and want to see how this story unfolds, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. And drop a comment telling me what country you're watching from. I absolutely love knowing how far these stories travel around the world. I want you to move to the 3rd floor, Junseo said, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. Amora's head snapped up. What? The staff quarters are too exposed. Anyone can get in there. The 3rd floor has better security, and there are empty rooms near. He stopped, something flickering across his face. Near where I can keep an eye on things. Sir, I can't. That's where your personal rooms are. It wouldn't be appropriate. I decide what's appropriate in my house. His tone left no room for argument. You'll move today. Minute-ho will arrange it. People will talk. Let them. He returned to his desk, already shifting back into boss mode. You're also being reassigned. Effective immediately, you're my personal attendant. The room tilted. You're what? Personal attendant. You'll handle my schedule, my meals, my dry cleaning. Whatever I need. He was opening his laptop now, not even looking at her. You'll work directly for me, report to no one else, and if anyone has a problem with it, they can take it up with me personally. The position comes with a significant raise. I'll have Minute-ho draw up new contracts this afternoon. Amora couldn't breathe. Personal attendant meant being near him. All the time. It meant Mrs. Choi's accusations would become reality in everyone's eyes, regardless of the truth. It meant becoming a target for anyone who resented Junseo's favor. It also meant safety. Protection. A door she could lock at night without worrying about Mrs. Choi's revenge. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Junseo finally looked up, and for a moment, just a moment, she saw past the cold mafia boss exterior to something raw and human underneath. Because no one touches what's mine, he said simply. And as of 5 minutes ago, you became mine to protect. The words should have terrified her. Should have sent her running for the door, the airport, anywhere but here. But instead, all Amora felt was a strange, dangerous warmth spreading through her chest. She was so screwed. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Minute-ho appeared within 20 minutes of Mrs. Choi's dismissal, his expression carefully neutral as he handed Amora a folder containing her new contract. The salary made her eyes water. It was 4 times what she'd been making. Enough to pay off her debts within a year instead of 5. Enough to send money home to her mother in Lagos. Enough to make her wonder what the hell Junseo actually wanted from her. He's never done this before, Minute-ho said quietly as they walked through the mansion toward the 3rd floor. He was carrying one of her boxes. She didn't own much, and his tone was more curious than hostile. Promoted someone like this. Move them into his personal space. I don't want special treatment, Amora said. I just want to work and stay out of trouble. Minute-ho laughed, the sound rough and genuine. Little late for that. You're in the deep end now. He stopped outside a door near the end of a long hallway. This is yours. The boss's suite is at the other end, his office is downstairs, and the gym is on the 2nd floor. You'll need to know his routine. He's up at 5 every morning, works out for an hour, breakfast at 7. Black coffee, 2 eggs, toast with butter, never jam. He has a temper, but he's fair. Don't lie to him, don't waste his time, and never, he paused, his expression serious. Never betray him. People who betray the boss don't get second chances. The warning was clear. Amora nodded, her mouth dry. Her new room was easily twice the size of the cramped quarters she'd shared with 3 other maids. It had its own bathroom, a real bed instead of a cot, a window overlooking the gardens. It was nicer than anywhere she'd lived in the past 5 years. Get settled, Minute-ho said. Boss wants to see you in his office at 7 for a briefing. Don't be late. When the door closed behind him, Amora sank onto the bed and let herself shake. What the hell had just happened? This morning she'd been invisible. Now she was living on Junseo's floor, working as his personal attendant, and the subject of what would undoubtedly become the juiciest gossip this mansion had seen in years. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Don't think you've won anything. You'll regret this. Mrs. Choi. Had to be. Amora deleted the message with trembling fingers and tried not to think about all the ways a woman with 30 years of connections could make her life hell. At 6:55, she knocked on Junseo's office door. Come in. He was standing by the window, still in his suit from earlier, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw her, he held up one finger, wait, and continued his conversation in rapid Korean. Amora caught maybe 1 word in 5, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone was getting their ass handed to them. When he hung up, he turned to her with an expression that might have been a smile. On anyone else, it would have been. On him, it looked like a predator showing its teeth. Punctual. Good. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Sit. We need to establish ground rules. Amara sat, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Professional. She could do professional. First, Junseo said, settling into his own chair. Honesty. I don't care if you think I'll be angry or if you're trying to protect someone. You tell me the truth, always. Agreed. Yes, sir. Second, if anyone, and I mean anyone, threatens you, intimidates you, or makes you feel unsafe, you come directly to me. Not Minute-Ho, not security. Me. Sir, I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden. You're my responsibility now. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. I take care of what's mine, Amara. That's not negotiable. There was that phrase again. What's mine? It should have bothered her more than it did. Third, your schedule. You'll wake at 6, be ready to go over my daily agenda by 7. You'll accompany me to any meetings where I need you, handle correspondence, manage my appointments. When I travel, you travel. When I'm working late, you're on call. In exchange, you get Sundays off, full benefits, and that salary we discussed. Amara's mind reeled. When you travel, sir, I don't have the proper documentation for. You do now. Minute-Ho expedited a new passport and visa today. You're cleared for international travel as part of my staff. That's impossible. That takes weeks. Not when you have the right connections. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Inside was a passport with her photo and a visa stamp she definitely hadn't applied for. Everything's legal, before you worry. I don't need immigration issues complicating things. Amara stared at the documents. The power it took to arrange this in hours, the strings that must have been pulled, the people who must have been bribed or threatened, it made her dizzy. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. I'm nobody. Just another foreign worker with debts. You could have just fired Mrs. Choi and left it at that. Junseo was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. You want the honest answer? Yes. I don't know yet. He stood, moving to the window again, hands in his pockets. I saw you at that charity dinner last week. The one Mrs. Choi mentioned. You were serving champagne, and some drunk businessman grabbed your ass. You smiled, stepped back, and accidentally spilled an entire tray of drinks down his front. Then you apologized so sweetly everyone thought it was his fault for being drunk. Amara's cheeks heated. She'd hoped no one had noticed. I noticed, Junseo continued. I noticed because most people in your position would have just taken it. Smiled through it. Let him pour at them because fighting back could mean losing their job. But you didn't. You fought back smart. Made it look like an accident. He turned to face her. I respect that. Respect people who know how to survive without becoming doormats. That doesn't explain. When you walked in today with that bruise, I realized I'd been paying more attention to you than I thought. Noticing when you entered a room. Listening for your voice. Wondering about the woman behind the maid's uniform. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Then I saw someone had hurt you, and I wanted to burn down the world. That's when I knew this was either going to be a very good decision or a spectacularly bad one. The honesty of it stole her breath. Men like Junseo didn't admit to vulnerability. Didn't confess to noticing maids. Didn't promote women based on gut feelings. I can't be what you want, Amara said carefully. If you're expecting. I'm not expecting anything except for you to do your job. He moved back to his desk, but this time he perched on the edge of it, closer to her. Whatever this is, it happens on your terms. You want to keep things professional, we keep them professional. You want to run for the hills, I'll personally book your flight. But you don't get to decide that I can't protect you. That's not negotiable. Amara met his gaze, trying to read the truth behind his words. In Nigeria, men who offered protection always wanted something in return. In Seoul, she'd learned the price was even higher. But Junseo's expression was steady, serious. Not leering. Not demanding. Maybe, just maybe, he meant what he said. Okay, she whispered. Professional. On my terms. Good. He stood, offering his hand. Then welcome to the deep end, Amara. Try not to drown. She took his hand, his grip warm and solid, and tried to ignore the spark that shot up her arm at the contact. Definitely screwed. The first week of her new position passed in a whirlwind of schedules, phone calls, and navigating the complex hierarchy of Junseo's criminal empire without actually understanding what half of it meant. She learned that meeting with the Songpa group meant negotiating territory. That handling the merchandise problem meant dealing with a shipment of God knew what that had been intercepted. That taking care of Park meant something violent she probably didn't want details about. She also learned that Kang Junseo was a nightmare to work for. I said I wanted the Kim file, not the Park file, he snapped on Wednesday morning, barely glancing at the folder she'd placed on his desk. You said Park 30 seconds ago. I said Kim. Pay attention. Amara bit back a retort and went to fetch the correct file, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth hurt. Professional. She could be professional. Even if he was an insufferable, temperamental jackass who changed his mind every 5 seconds and expected her to read his goddamn thoughts. By Friday, she was ready to quit. Coffee, he barked from his office. Amara was in the middle of organizing his schedule for the following week. Please, she called back. Silence. Then footsteps. Junseo appeared in the doorway of the small office he'd given her, his expression thunderous. What did you just say? Please. She met his glare without flinching. As in, coffee, please. Manners. I know you've heard of them. His jaw worked. For a moment she thought he might fire her on the spot. Then, impossibly, his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Coffee. Please. Of course, sir. Right away. When she brought him the cup, black, no sugar, precisely the temperature he preferred, he was back at his desk, but she caught the ghost of amusement still lurking in his eyes. You're a pain in the ass, he said, not looking up from his laptop. I learned from the best, sir. This time he did smile, and the sight of it, genuine and unexpected, made something flutter in her chest that she absolutely could not afford to feel. Professional. They were professional. The text messages from Mrs. Choi continued throughout the week, each one more threatening than the last. You think you're safe up there? Wait until he gets bored of you. I have friends. They know how to handle girls like you. You made a powerful enemy, foreign bitch. Amara deleted each one and tried not to let the fear show on her face. But Junseo noticed anyway. He noticed everything. Who keeps texting you? He asked on Saturday evening. They were in his office, her reviewing vendor invoices, him on a video call with someone in Hong Kong, when her phone buzzed for the 3rd time in an hour. No one important. He ended his call mid-sentence, which probably gave the person in Hong Kong a heart attack. Show me. Sir. That wasn't a request. Amara handed over her phone with shaking hands, watching his expression darken as he scrolled through Mrs. Choi's messages. When he reached the last one, I know where your mother lives, his face went absolutely blank. That's when she knew Mrs. Choi had made a fatal mistake. How did she get my mother's address? Amara whispered. I didn't tell anyone. Your employee file. Junseo's voice was dead calm. Emergency contact information. She must have accessed it before she left. He was already dialing. Minute ho. I need a location on former employee Choi Sun-hee. Now. He listened. I don't care where you have to look. Find her tonight. Another pause. And send someone to Lagos. Address is in Amara's file. I want eyes on her mother 24/7 until further notice. You can't, that's too much, Amara started. He held up a hand, still talking. No, not a message. I want her brought here. To the warehouse on Uedo. His eyes met Amara's, and they were empty of anything resembling mercy. Tell her it's a mandatory performance review. When he hung up, Amara was shaking. Please don't hurt her because of me. She's just angry. She threatened your mother. Junseo's voice was soft. Lethal. In my world, that means she declared war. You don't get to tell me how to handle my wars, Amara. I don't want blood on my hands. There won't be. He stood, already reaching for his jacket. I'm going to have a conversation with Mrs. Choi about appropriate boundaries and the consequences of making threats against my people. She'll leave that conversation understanding she made a mistake. That's all. Just a conversation. His smile was cold. I can be very persuasive when I want to be. He was gone before she could argue further, and Amara sank into her chair, her mind racing. She'd heard the stories, knew what conversations in Junseo's world usually entailed. But she'd also seen the text messages, felt the ice-cold terror of someone threatening her mother, the woman who'd sacrificed everything to give Amara a chance at a better life. Maybe some conversations needed to happen in warehouses. Junseo returned at 3 in the morning. Amara knew because she'd been unable to sleep, pacing her room and jumping at every sound. When she heard footsteps in the hallway, she opened her door to find him standing there, perfectly composed except for slightly rumpled hair and what might have been blood on his collar. Is she? Amara couldn't finish the sentence. Alive. Unharmed. Technically. Very clear on the concept that texting you again would be a poor life choice. He studied her face. You should be asleep. I can't. Not until I know, she gestured helplessly. Something softened in his expression. Come with me. He led her to his suite, a sprawling set of rooms she'd never been inside, and straight through to a private balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and exhaust, and a million lives lived in the city below. She signed a legal document, Jun Seo said quietly, leaning against the railing. Swearing she'll have no further contact with you or your family, directly or indirectly, for the rest of her life. If she breaks it, she goes to prison. I have enough connections in the justice system to make that happen. Just a legal document. Amara moved to stand beside him, not quite believing it. Well, a legal document and a vivid explanation of what would happen if the legal system failed. Details involving blowtorches and her kneecaps. But nothing actually happened. He glanced at her. You look disappointed. I'm not, she stopped. Maybe a little. He laughed, the sound rough and genuine. The bloodthirsty streak looks good on you. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city breathe below them. Amara had never seen Seoul from this height, this angle. From up here, it looked almost peaceful. Beautiful, even. Your mother's safe, Jun Seo said eventually. I have a team watching her building in Lagos. Local security, ex-military, very professional. They'll stay until I'm satisfied there's no threat. That must cost a fortune. I have several fortunes. Let me use one of them on this. Amara turned to look at him properly. In the moonlight, with his defenses down and exhaustion written across his face, he looked younger. Almost vulnerable. Why? She asked again. Really? Why do all this for me? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you didn't flinch when I slapped Mrs. Choi. What? Everyone else in the world flinches when I get violent. They should. I'm not a good man, Amara. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details. But when I hit Mrs. Choi, you gasped. Not because you were afraid of me. Because you were surprised someone had finally defended you. He turned to face her fully. Nobody's ever defended you before, have they? The question hit like a punch to the chest. Amara's throat went tight, and she looked away, blinking hard. That's not. Your employee file has your whole history. I read it. His voice was gentle now. You came to Seoul 5 years ago on a student visa. Dropped out when your father died and you had to send money home. Took a job at a restaurant where the owner kept your passport and claimed you owed him for training. Worked 18-hour days for less than minimum wage until immigration raided the place. Then you went to a factory, then a hotel, then here. Every place, someone was taking advantage. Every place, you had no one to turn to. She hadn't cried in years, but the tears came anyway. Silent, hot, angry tears for every time she'd been shorted on pay. Every time someone had touched her without permission. Every time she'd smiled and endured because fighting back meant deportation or worse. Hey. Jun Seo's hand landed gently on her shoulder. I'm not trying to make you cry. Too late, she managed, wiping at her face. You already succeeded. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. That you had to survive all that. That nobody helped. His thumb brushed across her shoulder blade, and even through her shirt she could feel the warmth of his touch. But that changes now. Understand. You're under my protection. Anyone who wants to hurt you has to go through me first. Amara looked up at him, at the fierce sincerity in his eyes, and felt something shift in her chest. Something dangerous and inevitable. I'm going to fall for you, she said before she could stop herself. If you keep doing things like this, saying things like this. She expected him to pull away, to remind her of their professional boundaries, to laugh it off. Instead, he cupped her face with both hands, his touch impossibly gentle for someone who'd made threats about blowtorches an hour ago. Would that be so terrible? Yes. Her voice cracked. Because you're a criminal. Because this is temporary. Because men like you don't end up with women like me in any story that doesn't end in tragedy. Men like me, he repeated softly. And what kind of man is that? Dangerous. Violent. Powerful. She couldn't look away from his eyes. The kind who ruins everything he touches. Maybe. His thumb traced the line of her cheekbone, carefully avoiding the fading bruise. Or maybe I'm the kind of man who spends 30 years building an empire just so I'll have enough power to protect the things I actually care about. He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. Maybe I'm the kind of man who's been waiting for someone brave enough to call me out on my shit. Someone who demands I say please. Amara's breath caught. They were too close. This was too much. But she couldn't move, Couldn't look away, couldn't do anything except feel her heart hammer against her ribs and wonder what his lips would feel like against hers. "We shouldn't," she whispered. "No," he agreed. "We definitely shouldn't." Neither of them moved. "This is a terrible idea," she tried again. "The worst." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Amara's eyes fluttered closed. One more second. One more inch. That's all it would take to cross the line they'd both been dancing around for a week. His phone rang. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers, and Jun Seo pulled out his phone with a muttered curse that made Amara almost smile despite everything. "What?" he snarled into the phone. He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. "Are you fucking kidding me?" Another pause. "Fine. I'll be there in 20. He hung up and turned to Amara, frustration and something that might have been regret warring in his eyes. "I have to go. One of my warehouses is on fire, and apparently it's not the accidental kind. Someone's attacking you." "Looks like it. Could be the Busan group retaliating for the deal I killed. Could be someone new trying to make a move." He was already heading for the door. "Stay here. Don't leave this floor. I'll have security posted outside." "Wait." Amara grabbed his arm. "Be careful." He looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then back at her face, and something blazed in his eyes that made her stomach flip. "Don't worry about me," he said softly. "I've survived worse than a warehouse fire." Then he was gone, and Amara was alone on the balcony, her lips still tingling from a kiss that hadn't even happened, her heart still racing from a confession she shouldn't have made. She was so screwed. The warehouse fire turned out to be just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Jun Seo's empire came under systematic attack. Another warehouse burned. A shipment disappeared. 3 of his men were beaten and left in an alley with a message carved into their backs: "Back off or die." The house became a fortress. Armed guards appeared on every floor. Meetings moved to secure locations. Jun Seo worked 18-hour days, his temper shorter than ever, dark circles blooming under his eyes. And Amara was with him through all of it. Taking notes during tense strategy sessions she barely understood. Bringing him food he barely touched. Reminding him to sleep when he'd been awake for 36 hours straight. "You should go home," he said one night, or was it morning? She'd lost track, around 4 a.m. They were in his office, papers spread across every surface, his laptop displaying what looked like security footage from a dozen different locations. "This is home," Amara said, refilling his coffee cup. "For now, anyway. It's not safe. Whoever's targeting me might come after you. Let them try." She settled into her usual chair across from his desk, picking up where she'd left off organizing files. "You're not getting rid of me that easily." Something flickered across his face, gratitude mixed with something deeper. "You're insane." "Probably. I blame you." They worked in silence for another hour before Jun Seo spoke again. "It's the Gwangju family." Amara looked up. "What?" "The attacks. It's the Gwangju family. Minute Ho confirmed it an hour ago. They think I've been encroaching on their territory, and they want to send a message." "Have you been encroaching?" "Yes." He didn't even pretend to lie. "Their territory includes the shipping routes I need for expansion. I knew they'd push back eventually. Didn't think they'd be this aggressive about it." "So what do you do?" "I have 3 options. 1. Back off and lose millions in potential revenue. 2. Escalate into an all-out war that will cost lives on both sides. 3. Negotiate." Amara studied his face. "Which one are you going to choose?" "A month ago? Option 2. Burn their operations to the ground and salt the earth." His expression was grim. "But now I have someone who'd be devastated if I got myself killed in some pointless gang war. Someone who makes me think maybe the empire isn't worth dying for." Her breath caught. "Jun Seo." "I'm choosing option 3, he continued. "Minute Ho's setting up a meeting for tomorrow. Neutral ground, both families, no weapons. We'll hash out a compromise that lets both of us operate without burning down half of Seoul in the process." "That's surprisingly mature." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't get used to it. I'm only doing it because I promised you I'd be careful." He stood, moving around the desk to where she sat today. "Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, you became the thing I care about protecting more than my pride." Amara's heart hammered. "That's a lot of pressure to put on a maid." "You're not a maid." He pulled her to her feet, his hands warm and solid on her arms. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "You're mine, and I take care of what's mine." There was that phrase again. But this time, instead of sounding possessive, it sounded like a promise. "Like a vow." "Jun Seo," she whispered, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heart beating, strong and steady. If you kiss me right now, there's no going back. We can't pretend it's professional anymore. Good. His hand slid up to cup her face, and this time there were no phones ringing, no fires to put out, no interruptions. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't want you. His lips met hers, and it was nothing like the gentle first kiss Amara had imagined during countless sleepless nights. It was desperate, hungry, 3 weeks of tension and longing compressed into one combustible moment. His hands tangled in her braids, pulling her closer, and she gasped against his mouth, her fingers clutching at his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jun Seo rested his forehead against hers. Tell me you want this. That I'm not alone in this insanity. You're not alone, Amara breathed. I want this. I want you. Even though it's stupid and dangerous and probably going to end badly. Those are my favorite kinds of decisions. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with want but also something softer. Stay with me tonight. Not like that. Just stay. I sleep better when you're close. It should have been a terrible idea. Should have violated every professional boundary they'd already shattered. But Amara found herself nodding, following him through his suite to a bedroom that was surprisingly simple. Just a bed, a dresser, blackout curtains. They lay down together, still fully clothed, her head on his chest and his arms wrapped around her like she was something precious. Something worth protecting. Tell me about Lagos, he murmured into her hair. About your mother. So she did. Told him about growing up in a cramped apartment with a mother who worked 3 jobs to keep Amara in school. About her father's death, the medical bills that had swallowed every naira they had. About the desperate decision to come to Seoul, believing the promises of good wages and legal work. I was so stupid, she whispered. I thought I could save everyone. Instead, I just ended up trapped. You're not trapped anymore. His arms tightened around her. And you're not stupid. You're a survivor. There's a difference. She tilted her head to look up at him. Tell me something true about you. Something nobody else knows. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. I have nightmares, he finally said. About the night I took over from my father. About what I had to do to prove I was strong enough to lead. About, he stopped, his jaw clenched. About all the blood. Some nights I wake up and I can still smell it. Amara's heart ached for him. For the boy who'd been forced to become a monster to survive. Is that why you don't sleep much? Part of it. His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. The other part is that I'm always waiting for the next attack. The next betrayal. When you grow up the way I did, you learn that peace is just the space between disasters. Maybe, Amara said softly. You need to learn that some things are worth believing in. Worth trusting. Even if it's scary. Like you. Like us. He kissed the top of her head, and she felt him relax incrementally, the tension bleeding out of his body. Within minutes, his breathing had evened out, his grip on her loosening slightly as sleep claimed him. Amara stayed awake longer, listening to his heartbeat and wondering how the hell she'd gone from a bruised maid trying to survive to a woman falling in love with Seoul's most dangerous man. But as she finally drifted off, wrapped in his arms and his warmth, she found she didn't regret a single stupid decision that had led her here. She woke up alone. The sun was streaming through gaps in the curtains, and Jun Seo's side of the bed was cold. For a moment, panic gripped her. What if last night had been a mistake? What if he regretted it? Then she saw the note on his pillow, meeting with Gwangju family at noon. Didn't want to wake you. Coffee's in the kitchen. Stay on this floor. Jay. Amara smiled despite herself and went to find that coffee. Minute-Ho was waiting in the kitchen, looking exhausted but grimly satisfied. Boss told me to brief you, he said without preamble. The meeting's at a hotel downtown. Neutral territory. Both sides agreed to send only their core leadership. No weapons. No backup within a mile radius. It's as safe as these things get. Which means it's not safe at all, Amara said. Smart girl. Minute-Ho's expression was approving. The Gwangju family patriarch is Kim Tae-jin. Old school, brutal, not known for compromise. His son, Kim Sung-ho, is more reasonable but also more ambitious. There's tension there we might be able to exploit. Why are you telling me this? Because the boss wants you to understand his world. And because, Minute-Ho paused, choosing his words carefully. Because you're good for him. I've worked for Kang Jun-seo for 8 years. Never seen him care about anything except the empire. Then you show up with your bruised face and your smart mouth, and suddenly he's choosing negotiation over war. Making plans that include someone else's safety. Sleeping through the night for the first time in months. Amara's cheeks heated. He told you. He didn't have to. The man looks less like a corpse this morning. I can do math. Minato's expression softened slightly. Just be careful. People in our world don't get happy endings. The ones we care about become targets. I know. Do you? Because it's one thing to know it intellectually. It's another thing to live through a kidnapping, a bombing, a home invasion where they are coming for you just to hurt him. That's what being with someone like the boss means. Then I guess I better learn how to shoot, Amara said with more confidence than she felt. Minato actually smiled. I'll arrange lessons for next week. Assuming we all survive today's meeting. The hours until noon dragged like years. Amara tried to work, tried to eat, tried to do anything except imagine all the ways the meeting could go wrong. When her phone finally buzzed at 11:47, she nearly dropped it. Everything's fine. Meeting's going well. Be home by 3. J. She relaxed fractionally. Then, at 12:13, another text. Scratch that. Complications. Don't worry. Don't worry. Right. Because complications in a meeting between Mafia families was totally not a reason to panic. By 1 p.m., Amara was pacing her room, ignoring Minato's texts telling her to calm down. By 2 p.m., she was debating whether she could hire a car to the hotel. By 3 p.m., when Junseo still hadn't returned and wasn't answering his phone, she was in full panic mode. Minato burst into her room without knocking at 3:47. Get your things. Now. What happened? The Gwangju family brought weapons. It was a setup. They never intended to negotiate. There was gunfire. The boss took a hit, and Amara didn't hear the rest. She was already running, following Minato down the stairs and out to a waiting car. Her mind had gone blank except for one thought repeating like a prayer. Please let him be okay, please let him be okay, please let him be okay. They arrived at a private clinic in Gangnam 20 minutes later. The place looked like a normal medical office, but Amara spotted the guards and the reinforced doors and knew this was where people came when they couldn't risk a public hospital. Junseo was in a back room, sitting on an exam table while a doctor stitched up his shoulder. His shirt was off, blood was everywhere, and his face was a mask of fury that melted the second he saw her in the doorway. You're okay, Amara breathed. I told Minato to keep you at the house. His voice was rough with pain and something that might have been fear. You shouldn't see this. She crossed the room in 3 strides and wrapped her arms around him, carefully, avoiding his injury, burying her face against his neck. You got shot. Just grazed. Barely counts. You got shot. She pulled back to glare at him through tears she couldn't stop. You said it was fine. You said not to worry. It was fine. Until Kim Taijin decided he'd rather start a war than give me an inch of territory. Junseo's good arm came around her waist, pulling her close despite the doctor's protests about holding still. I'm okay, Amara. I've had worse. That doesn't make me feel better. I know. He pressed his lips to her forehead. But I'm here. I'm alive. And as soon as this sadist, he glared at the doctor, finishes sewing me up, we're going home. What about the Gwangju family? His expression went cold. That's being handled. They broke the terms of neutral meeting. That means they've declared war, and I'm going to end it. The violence in his voice should have scared her. Instead, all Amara felt was a fierce, protective anger on his behalf. Good. They deserve whatever you're planning. Junseo's eyes widened slightly. Then he smiled, a real smile that transformed his whole face. There's that bloodthirsty streak again. I knew I liked you for a reason. The doctor finished stitching and bandaging, dispensed painkillers and wound care instructions that Junseo barely listened to, and finally left them alone. Amara helped him into a clean shirt, her hands shaking as she buttoned it for him. This is my life, Junseo said quietly. Gunfights and betrayals and blood. If you stay with me, this won't be the last time you see me like this. It might not even be the worst. I know. And you're still here. She met his eyes. I'm still here. He kissed her then, desperate and grateful and full of promises neither of them could guarantee. When they broke apart, his hand cupped her face, thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone where the bruise had finally faded completely. We should leave Seoul, he said. After I deal with the Gwangju family. Take a few weeks. Go somewhere quiet. Let me show you what life could be like without guns and guards and without your empire. Amara finished softly. Junseo, I don't need you to be someone else. I just need you to be honest. To let me in. To stop trying to protect me from reality when reality is that I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Bullet wounds and all. Something shifted in his expression, wonder mixed with disbelief, like he couldn't quite believe anyone would choose him, the real him, not the power or the money or the image. You're insane, he said again. So you keep telling me. She kissed him gently. Now let's go home before Minute Ho has a heart attack worrying about us. The war with the Gwangju family lasted 3 brutal weeks. Amara watched Junseo transform into someone harder, colder, more ruthless than she'd ever seen. He gave orders that resulted in businesses burning, shipments disappearing, key members of the Gwangju organization ending up in hospitals or worse. But he also came to her every night, let her clean and rebandage his shoulder, held her like she was the only thing keeping him human. 5 of their warehouses are gone, he said one night, lying in his bed with his head in her lap while she ran her fingers through his hair. Kim Tae-jin is bleeding money. His son wants to negotiate, but the old man's too proud. So what happens now? Now we wait. Pride only lasts so long when bankruptcy is staring you in the face. And if he doesn't surrender? Junseo's eyes were closed, his voice almost drowsy. Then I keep taking until there's nothing left to take. I offered peace. He chose war. That's on him. Amara bent down to kiss his forehead. You're terrifying. Only to my enemies. His hand found hers. To you, I'm just Junseo, the man who makes terrible decisions and falls for his maid. Former maid. I'm a personal attendant now. Much more respectable. He laughed, the sound rough and genuine. Right. Very respectable. That's why you're currently in my bed with your hand in my hair. Strictly professional. Obviously. They fell into comfortable silence, and Amara thought he'd dozed off until he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. I love you. Her heart stopped. Started again. Beat so hard she was sure he could hear it. What? I love you. He opened his eyes, looking up at her with an expression so vulnerable it hurt. I've never said that to anyone except my mother, and she's been dead for 15 years. But I love you, Amara. Your strength, your fire, the way you refuse to be afraid of me. The way you make me want to be better than I am. Tears blurred her vision. You barely know me. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar. I know you sing in the shower when you think no one's listening, American R&B from the early 2000s. I know you send half your salary home to Lagos and you Skype your mother every Sunday morning. I know you cry during sad movies but not when you're in pain. I know you're loyal and brave and so fucking stubborn. His hand tightened around hers. And I know that in 3 months, you've become the only thing I'd sacrifice my empire for. Junseo. You don't have to say it back. I just need you to know. Need you to understand that this isn't casual for me. That when I say you're mine, it's not possession, it's devotion. Amara wiped at her tears with her free hand. You're an idiot. I've been told. Because I already loved you. Since that first night on the balcony when you admitted you had nightmares. Maybe even before that, when you fired Mrs. Choi without hesitation, when you chose me over a business deal, when you made me feel like I mattered for the first time in years. He sat up so fast it must have hurt his shoulder, his hands framing her face. Say it again. I love you, Kang Junseo. Your violence and your tenderness. Your empire and your nightmares. All of it. All of you. He kissed her like a man drowning, like she was air and water and salvation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. Marry me, he said. Amara laughed, the sound watery and disbelieving. We've known each other 3 months. You're in the middle of a gang war. I'm a foreign worker with a complicated visa situation. This is insane. I know. All my best decisions are. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. But I'm serious. Marry me. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. When the war's over and things are stable and I can give you the wedding you deserve. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the risk you took on me. She should say no. Should be practical. Should remember that fairy tales didn't exist and mafia bosses didn't marry their maids and this kind of love never ended in anything but tragedy. But she looked into his eyes, those dark, dangerous, devoted eyes, and found she didn't care about should. Yes, she whispered. Someday. When you're ready to be honest about what you do, when I'm ready to be part of it, when we've figured out how to make this work without killing each other. Yes. His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. You're insane. I learned from the best. He kissed her again, softer this time, full of promises and possibilities. And for the first time since that day she'd walked into his office with a bruised face and a heart full of fear, Amara let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. The call came at 4 a.m. 2 days later. Minato's voice was tense. Kim Tae-jin wants to meet. Just him and the boss. Tomorrow at dawn. The old temple in Bukhansan. Junseo took the phone from speaker, listened for a moment, then said, I'll be there. No. Amara grabbed his arm when he hung up. It's a trap. It has to be. Probably. He was already getting dressed, moving with purpose despite his still healing shoulder. But if there's a chance to end this without more bloodshed, I have to take it. Why? You were winning. Because I'm tired, Amora. He turned to face her, and she saw the exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Tired of fighting, of looking over my shoulder, of waking up wondering who's going to betray me today. Kim Tae-jin is old school. If he's calling for a face-to-face meeting, he's ready to discuss terms. His word actually means something. And if it doesn't, if he brings guns, then I bring more guns. He crossed the room to cup her face. I'll be careful. I promise. You promised that last time, and you got shot. Grazed. At her glare, he sighed. Fine. Shut. But I'm still here. Still standing. Still yours. She wanted to argue more, wanted to lock him in the bedroom and refused to let him go. But she could see the determination in his eyes, the need to end this on terms he could live with. Come back to me, she said instead. Whatever happens, whatever it costs, come back. Always. He kissed her goodbye like it might be the last time, and Amara watched him leave with dread pooling in her stomach. The hours until dawn dragged like days. Amara paced, checked her phone obsessively, drove Minute-ho crazy with questions he couldn't answer. When the sun finally rose over Seoul's skyline and Jun Seo still hadn't called, she knew something had gone wrong. Minute-ho confirmed it at 6:15. The boss isn't answering. Neither is his security team. I'm sending people to the temple now. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. I'm coming. Don't try to stop me. They arrived at Bukhansan Temple 30 minutes later. The ancient building sat nestled in the mountains, serene and beautiful in the morning light. Also completely deserted. No Jun Seo. No Kim Tae-jin. No security teams. Just an envelope pinned to the temple door with a knife. Minute-ho grabbed it, his face going pale as he read. Then he handed it to Amora without a word. If you want him back alive, you'll deliver 500 million won and control of the Gangnam district by midnight tonight. Bring the money to the old fish market on the docks. Come alone, or he dies. Kim Sung-ho. Not the father. The son. The ambitious one who wanted power more than peace. It's a coup, Minute-ho said quietly. Sung-ho used the meeting to grab the boss, probably killed or imprisoned his own father to take control. Now he's trying to get ransom and territory at the same time. Amora's hands shook as she read the note again. We pay. We give him what he wants. It's not that simple. I don't care. Her voice cracked. We pay. We negotiate. We do whatever it takes. Minute-ho studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but we do this smart. I'll gather the money, assemble a team, set up counter-surveillance. If they are watching us, and they definitely are, we need to look compliant while actually preparing for war. They spent the day in frantic preparation. Amora barely registered the details. Just that Minute-ho was moving money, calling in favors, assembling what he called the boss's most loyal men. People who would die for Jun Seo without question. At 11 p.m., they headed to the docks. The old fish market was a decrepit building that reeked of salt and decay, surrounded by warehouses and shipping containers. Perfect place for an ambush. Minute-ho had wanted Amora to stay behind. She'd refused. Now she sat in the back of an armored SUV, a briefcase containing 500 million won in cash on her lap, and terror clawing at her throat. Here's what's going to happen, Minute-ho said, checking his gun one last time. You go in with the money. I'll be 50 meters out with a sniper team on the roofs. The second we confirm the boss is alive, we move in. Fast and hard. No negotiation after that point. What if they kill him when you start shooting? They won't. He's their leverage. They need him alive until they have the money. Minute-ho's expression was grim. But Amora, listen to me. If things go wrong, if Kim Sung-ho figures out this is a setup, you run. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to save the boss yourself. You run, and you let us handle it. I'm not leaving him. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, the boss will never forgive himself. And neither will I. He squeezed her shoulder. Trust me. Trust the team. We've done this before. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Come inside. Alone. No tricks. This was it. Amora grabbed the briefcase, steadied her shaking hands, and stepped out into the night. The fish market was dark except for a single bare bulb hanging in the center of the main room. And there, tied to a chair beneath that light, blood on his face and his shirt torn, was Jun Seo. Amora. His voice was hoarse. What the fuck are you doing here? Bringing your ransom, apparently. She stepped forward, And that's when she saw Kim Sung-ho emerge from the shadows. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s, handsome in a cold way, with eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. "The money?" he asked. Amara set the briefcase down. "It's all there. 500 million won. Now let him go." "Not quite yet." Kim Sung-ho opened the briefcase, rifled through the cash, then smiled. "See, here's the thing. I don't actually need his territory. I have my own territory now, my father's. What I need is for Kang Jun-seo to be permanently removed from the playing field. Dead or broken, doesn't matter which." Ice flooded Amara's veins. That wasn't the deal. The deal was bullshit. A lure to get you here. Because the boss's little maid girlfriend showing up to save him? That's interesting. That's useful. He pulled a gun from his jacket. "Here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to shoot him." "What?" Amara and Jun-seo spoke simultaneously. "You shoot him," Kim Sung-ho repeated, offering her the gun. "Right here, in front of me. Prove you're not just some lovesick idiot playing house with a gangster. Prove you understand how this world works. Do that, and I'll let you both live. You'll become my employee. He'll retire from the life. Everyone walks away." "Don't." Jun-seo's voice was hard. "Don't touch that gun, Amara. He's going to kill us both regardless." "Smart man." Kim Sung-ho's smile widened. "But wrong about one thing. I'll definitely kill you." "Ha! I haven't decided yet. She's pretty, she's resourceful, and she clearly has skills worth developing. Could be useful in my organization." "Over my dead body," Jun-seo snarled. "That can be arranged." The gun came up, pointed at Jun-seo's head. "Last chance, girl. Shoot him alive, or watch him die and pray I decide you're worth keeping around." Amara's mind raced. Minute-ho was out there somewhere. The sniper team. Backup. But they were waiting for confirmation Jun-seo was alive, waiting for the right moment. If Kim Sung-ho pulled that trigger now. "Okay," she said. "Okay. I'll do it. Give me the gun." "Amara, no," Jun-seo started. She met his eyes, and she prayed he understood what she was trying to tell him. "Trust me. Please trust me." Kim Sung-ho handed her the gun. It was heavier than she'd expected, cold and deadly in her hands. She approached Jun-seo slowly, the weapon shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered when she was close enough that only he could hear. Then, louder, "Where do you want me to shoot him?" "Leg. Somewhere non-fatal but painful. I want him to suffer before." Amara spun and fired. Not at Jun-seo. At Kim Sung-ho. She'd never shot a gun before, had no training, no practice. But luck or fate or something else was on her side, because the bullet caught Kim Sung-ho in the shoulder, spinning him around. Chaos erupted. The doors exploded inward as Minute-ho's team swarmed in. Gunfire erupted, so loud it hurt. Amara dove behind Jun-seo's chair, frantically working at the ropes binding him. "You beautiful, insane woman." Jun-seo gasped as the ropes came free. He grabbed the gun from her hands and returned fire, using his body to shield her. "When we get out of this, I'm either going to kill you or marry you immediately. Haven't decided which." "How about both?" Amara yelped as a bullet shattered the light above them, plunging the room into darkness lit only by muzzle flashes. The firefight lasted maybe 2 minutes. When the lights came back on, Minute-ho had found a switch somewhere. Kim Sung-ho lay on the ground, bleeding and surrounded. His men were either dead, unconscious, or fleeing. "Boss!" Minute-ho called out. "Hey, I'm okay. Amara's okay. Tell me you have medical on standby." Waiting outside. Minute-ho appeared through the smoke, taking in the scene. Jun-seo battered but alive, Amara shaking beside him, Kim Sung-ho groaning on the floor. "Did she just shot the bastard?" "Yes." Jun-seo pulled Amara against him, despite his injuries. "Reminded me why I'm marrying her." "You're not married." Kim Sung-ho rasped from the floor. "All this for a girlfriend." "Fiancé," Jun-seo corrected. "And yay, all this and more. Because unlike you, I understand what loyalty actually means." The aftermath was a blur of paramedics, police who were obviously on Jun-seo's payroll, and Minute-ho handling cleanup with terrifying efficiency. Kim Sung-ho was arrested, something about weapons charges and kidnapping. His organization crumbled within days, leaderless and demoralized. The war was over. Jun-seo had won, though he'd come dangerously close to losing everything. 2 weeks later, Amara woke up in a hotel room in Jeju Island. Not the mansion. Not Seoul. Somewhere quiet and peaceful where the only sounds were waves crashing and birds singing. Jun-seo was already awake, sitting on the balcony with coffee and a view of the ocean. His shoulder was healing, The bruises on his face had faded to yellow, and he looked more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Morning," she said, joining him. "Morning." He pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Sleep okay?" For the first time in weeks. She leaned back against his chest. "No nightmares about gunfights or fish markets or psychotic mafia sons." "Good. That's why we're here. 2 weeks of nothing but sun, ocean, and each other." His lips brushed her temple. "No empire. No wars. Just us. What happens when we go back?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I need to rebuild some relationships, shore up alliances, make sure everyone knows the Gwangju territory is officially mine now. But I'm also thinking of restructuring. Promoting Minute Ho to handle more of the day-to-day operations. Spending less time on the violent side of things and more time on the legitimate businesses. Because of me. Because of us." He turned her to face him. "I meant what I said. You're the only thing I'd sacrifice my empire for. And I want a life where I can actually live to see old age with you. Where we can have kids someday without me worrying they'll be targets. Where you don't have to shoot anyone else to save me." Amara laughed, the sound watery. "I still can't believe I did that. You were incredible. Terrifying. Minato wants to recruit you." "Absolutely not." That's what I told him. Junseo's expression turned serious. "I also told him I want to marry you before the year's out. He's already planning security for the wedding. Apparently we need to invite half of Seoul's underworld to avoid offending anyone." "That sounds horrible." "It does, doesn't it?" He grinned. "So how about we skip the big wedding and do something small? Just us, Minato as a witness, a judge who doesn't ask questions about the groom's employment status." "You want to elope?" "I want to marry you. The how doesn't matter." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light. "I bought this 3 days after we got back from the fish market. Been carrying it around waiting for the right moment. But the truth is, there is no perfect moment. Not in our world. So I'm asking now, here, where it's just us and the ocean. Amora, will you marry me? For real this time, not just someday, but soon." She looked at the ring, at his face, at the hope and love and devotion written in every line of his expression. 3 months ago, she'd been a nobody. A maid with a bruised face and a mountain of debt. Now she was a woman in love with a dangerous man, a woman who'd survived gang wars and kidnappings, a woman who'd found family in the strangest place. "Yes," she said, and watched his face transform with joy. "Yes, I'll marry you. In our horrible, imperfect, absolutely insane life." He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promises, while the sun rose over Jeju and Seoul's underworld woke up to a new reality. Kang Junseo was officially off the market. 3 months later, they stood in a small courthouse in Seoul with Minute Ho and a confused judge who definitely had questions about why Korea's most infamous mafia boss was marrying his former maid but knew better than to ask. The ceremony took 15 minutes. The kiss lasted longer. "Mrs. Kang," Junseo murmured against her lips. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Perfect. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "Good." He laced his fingers through hers. "Because you're stuck with me now. For better or worse. Mostly worse, probably. Definitely worse. I'm a terrible husband. Good thing I'm a terrible wife, then. We'll figure it out together." They walked out of the courthouse into Seoul's afternoon sun, ready for whatever came next. Minato had the car waiting, armored, because some things never changed. But inside, away from the world and its violence, Amora and Junseo built something softer. A home. A partnership. A love that started with a bruise and a question and grew into something neither of them had known they needed. Did they live happily ever after? Not exactly. There were still threats, still dangers, still nights when Junseo woke up from nightmares and Amora had to remind him he was safe. There were arguments and mistakes and the constant balancing act of loving someone from a different world. But they lived. They fought for each other. They built a life that was messy and complicated and absolutely worth every risk they'd taken. And when their daughter was born 2 years later, a tiny, screaming miracle with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn determination, Junseo held her with hands that had dealt violence for decades and wept like a child. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's ours," Amora corrected, watching him cradle their daughter with infinite gentleness. "Our perfect, impossible miracle. What should we name her?" Amora thought for a moment, then smiled. "Hope. Let's name her Hope. Because that's what this is. Proof that even in the darkest places, even in the most unlikely circumstances, hope survives." Junseo kissed his daughter's forehead, then his wife's. "Hope Kang. I like it. Our daughter. Our future. Our everything. And in that moment, in a hospital room in Seoul with their newborn daughter sleeping peacefully, a reformed mafia boss and his fierce wife understood that sometimes the best stories don't have neat endings. They have beginnings. New chapters. Second chances for people who never thought they deserved them. The bandage had healed. The bruises had faded. But the love that had grown from that moment of violence and protection, that would last forever. If this story kept you hooked from start to finish, here's what I need from you. Smash that like button if you're a believer in second chances and impossible love stories. Subscribe to this channel if you want more stories that will have you on the edge of your seat. And listen, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, what was your favorite moment? Was it when Amara shot Kim Sung-ho? When Jun Seo proposed? When they named their daughter Hope? Drop a comment and let's talk about it. Also, would you have made the same choices Amara did? Would you have stayed with someone as dangerous as Jun Seo? Or would you have run the first chance you got? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts. And if you really want to support the channel and encourage me to write more jaw-dropping stories like this, consider sending a super thanks. It genuinely means the world and helps me keep creating content that hopefully keeps you entertained. And one more thing, if you know someone who loves romance stories with actual stakes, with real danger and real emotion, share this video with them. These stories deserve to be heard. Now go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is open your heart to the wrong person. Or maybe, just maybe, the absolutely right one.